Some of you watching this video might not remember a time when Mario and Sonic weren't competing at the Olympic Games. The Wii original launched 12 years ago, and now we're on our 6th installment. However, this one did come as a bit of a surprise. The 2018 Korean Winter Olympics were completely skipped over, making that the first time that Mario and Sonic just decided to stay at home. But now they're back and on their home turf in Tokyo, so this should be a special one. I mean, Wario's topless, so it's gotta be at least a little special, right? The 2016 Rio Olympics fell a little short in the gameplay department, offering the least amount of sports in the entire series. But Tokyo offers 24 core modes and 10 brand new retro ones, a far cry from Rio's 14 total. Yeah, there weren't many. Though if you did play Rio, then a lot of these sports are going to feel very familiar. They're basically modelled after those variations. You've got smaller scale games like 100-meter sprint, bringing back the simplicity of Wii motion controls, all the way up to more complex sports like a full-on game of football. And with the return of Dream events, if only on a small scale, this is shaping up to be one of the most complete Mario and Sonic games in a very long time.
The crowd is watching quietly. It's begun. Very strong form, going for it.
And for the first time in a console entry, Mario and Sonic has a full-on story mode. Sonic, Eggman, Mario and Bowser all get sucked into a retro game system themed around the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, and as they try and find their way out from the inside, Luigi and Tails are trying to get them out from the outside. It's actually an interesting premise, and I love the way it mixes in both the modern sports and the brand new retro sports. As a crossover though, it's a little lackluster. I know these guys have been at the Olympics for 12 years now, but seeing Rouge the Bat casually be like, "Oh hi Luigi," feels weird. There's no rivalry or dynamic encounters between any of the characters. Bowser and Eggman come the closest with their evil schemes bouncing off each other, but being trapped in the Retro Olympics, they don't get to interact with the majority of the cast. Story mode takes a little while to really get interesting. You'll start off competing in really basic sports which barely last a minute, so the ratio of story to gameplay is thrown way off balance. It does gradually start to flow a little better though, and I did actually find myself getting invested in the core premise. Especially the retro side. There's a very real danger of Mario and Sonic being stuck inside this machine, and the retro sprites are way more expressive than the floating character models of the 3D side. That said though, why mix 8-bit Mario with 16-bit Sonic? It's not like either franchise doesn't have respective sprites, so Sonic and Eggman end up being way more animated than Mario and Bowser. Seen as an extra rather than the core purpose, story mode is a pretty fine inclusion. It lasts around 5 hours, unlocks some extra characters, and there's even a few minigames exclusive to it. In fact, these minigames are some of the best parts of Tokyo 2020. They're the closest the game comes to combining and complementing the universes of Mario and Sonic. Like there's one that feels almost like an Outrun style Sonic special stage, another where Mario and Sonic go through a Sky Chase style zone together, and another where you sneak by Mario enemies in what's essentially Mario Gear Solid. This is awesome stuff. It's how Dream events felt in the first couple of games before the series slowly adapted to just wackier versions of regular sports. You can replay these minigames outside of the story mode, but they unfortunately aren't fleshed out like the core sports, limiting their replayability. Even if the story's quite simple, it still digs pretty deep to get as many characters in there as it can. I mean, Eggman Nega is a core part of this story. You know, the villain from the Sonic Rush games? From 14 years ago? I hope continuously pointing out how long it's been since games makes you feel old. Yet this roster is owed almost entirely to previous games. There are no new characters in here, despite there being clear candidates like Pauline and Mighty and Ray. I do appreciate them going through the effort to dress each one in event-specific attire though. It really gives a huge personality boost to the game. I mean, Mario's not running in overalls anymore. I feel good for the guy. But then you have the unlockable characters who are only playable in one specific event. Like Diddy Kong works in rugby and nothing else. Rosalina works in surfing but not anywhere else. And you can look at Zavok in the menu for boxing but then not choose him because he's Zavok. It almost makes the game feel unfinished. Visually though, Tokyo 2020 is a bit of a stunner. These models just look absolutely fantastic, and even the small story world hub areas are full of life and detail. I just wish I could say the same for the music. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but where are the beautiful remixes? Outside of a fast-paced version of Peach's Castle, there's nothing that really stood out, and as a fan of both franchises, that's a huge disappointment. I mean, the music's where this franchise usually thrives. Dream events were absolutely the best part of the 2012 and 2010 games. They fully embraced both franchises and had you flying around Good Egg Galaxy from Mario Galaxy and competing through Windy Valley from Sonic Adventure, and the soundtracks that came from them were extraordinary. Rio certainly felt less ambitious with no Dream events and just altered regular events, and Tokyo in some ways takes a step forward and in other ways takes steps back. Like for instance, London 2012 had 10 Dream events that were all based off existing sports but completely overhauled with Mario and Sonic love. Tokyo 2020 only has 3. On the plus side, these barely resemble their ordinary counterparts. I mean, Boxing and Dream Boxing couldn't be more different, but they also don't fully embrace Mario and Sonic. The closest we get is Odyssey's Mushroom Kingdom being the backdrop of Dream Boxing, but it has zero effect on the gameplay. It's all background material. And you cannot have that few moons in the Mushroom Kingdom. That's not how it works! I could barely recognize Metropolis from Sonic Forces in the racing event, possibly because it's Metropolis from Sonic Forces, and Dream Shooting isn't based on anything from either franchise. In fairness, all 3 absolutely are fun, but it's just such a far cry from the variety and energy of the older games, which all went a step further to celebrate these gaming giants coming together. Tokyo 2020 just seems to have settled on the crossover, both from a story and gameplay sense. But if you miss the era of Wii Party games, then Tokyo 2020 is like opening a door to the past. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. That generation had some of the most accessible pick-up-and-play multiplayer games, and this largely recaptures that feeling. Almost every sport can be played with optional motion controls or dedicated buttons too. The buttons are obviously more accurate, but I found motion to be way more involved. Like, these aren't the most in-depth sports in the world, and playing them exclusively with buttons does start to highlight how simple they can be. And a great deal of these sports appeared in previous titles and play near identically, especially those from Rio 2016. I mean, putting them side by side, sports like rugby and football and javelin look almost exactly the same. So rather than being a fresh new take, it's more of a best-of revision with a few brand new games thrown in too. I mean, outside of the 10 retro sports, only a handful are new to Tokyo 2020. I mean, there's sport climbing, surfing, and skateboarding. Though there are a good amount here from previous titles that weren't in Rio but are in Tokyo, so it's definitely a step up from the previous game. But unfortunately, the retro events are the most one and done of the lot. They were clearly going for NES era simplicity, and that leaves a lot of them feeling rather small. Like 10-meter platform just has you pressing random buttons in the correct order, 100-meter sprint is basically a simpler version of the main game, and while marathon may look ambitious at first, it feels the same every single time. I enjoy them in the context of story mode, but they don't really feel built for multiplayer, and multiplayer is really what this game is all about. If you're playing on your own, then the core game won't take too long to feel overly familiar. Like, the new skateboarding mode is pretty simple. You can do ollies, grind, perform jumps, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not exactly a Tony Hawk game, but when competing with another person, the simplicity kind of pays off. I mean, after all, the last thing you want to do in a party setting is sit down while everyone takes in all the rules for these 34 different sports. On your own though, yeah, it can get dull pretty fast. Dream Racing, for instance, is a pretty fun mix of Mario Kart and Sonic Riders. You're basically skateboarding down a giant circuit in the sky complete with ramps and grind rails. However, Mario Kart style items really help spice things up. But with only one track to race through, it doesn't take too long to feel done with it. However, it's not all doom and gloom if you don't have a friend handy. Unlike the 2014 Olympics, which just had 4 playable sports online, and especially unlike the 2016 Olympics, which had, well, 0 sports online, Tokyo lets you play absolutely everything with the exception of retro sports. The entire setup is pretty seamless too, though I can absolutely see the freedom coming at a cost. Like, how busy will the canoe servers be a year from now? Maybe there should have been a few more restraints. So while there absolutely is a lack of variety to each game, being able to jump between them both locally and online goes a long way to mitigating that. Online gives this particular entry a huge selling point over Rio. It's a surprisingly great effort. Unfortunately, with each entry, Mario and Sonic has slowly lost track of how impactful it is to bring these two franchises together. Tokyo is without a doubt an improvement over Rio, but we're still far from replicating the series at its best. Unless online means a lot to you, there's not really enough new here to recommend it to series veterans. But if you want a quick, Wii-era multiplayer fix, then this is one of the best options on Switch. It may not reach the ambition of the 2010 Winter Olympics or London 2012, but this is one of the most refined and accessible Mario and Sonic games in a long time. But I ended up feeling meh about Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. God, that's a long title. The series can be better than this, but I still had a good time making my way through the story mode and taking these sports online. I also enjoyed seeing Blaze the Cat punch Daisy in the face and Eggman outright shoot Waluigi. He's dead. The series is back on the right track. It just needs to go a little further. But with that said, thank you so much for watching, and if you're thinking about buying Mario and Sonic, let us know down in the comments below. Of course, also be sure to subscribe to Game Explain and ring that bell for a lot more on Mario and Sonic, and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye!
Yeah.